Hi everyone, it's Mindy Eggen and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm showing you how to really make your die cuts pop by inking them with contrasting colors. This simple technique is going to add instant depth, dimension, and visual interest to your projects. I'm going to walk you through my color choices, blending tips, and how to really make those die cuts stand out. I will have all of my supplies linked down below in the video description and over on my blog. Now, let's get started. Any die set is going to work for this technique, but the one that I'm going to use today is the Jaunty Sunflower from Simon Says Stamp. I absolutely love sunflowers. I also love fall, but instead of jumping into the fall colors, I figured I'd try a little bit of a different color combination. So off screen, I did go ahead and die cut out my flowers from Hammermill Cardstock. Again, any white cardstock will work for this. I do like Hammermill because it is great for blending, and I die cut the flowers out. So I'm going to have three sets of flowers. I did six flowers all together, and I'm going to layer them up to give me the three. To do my inking, I am going to use a sticky mat. This happens to be the Craft Tacky Mat from Simon Says Stamp. I believe it's about a 7 by 7, maybe ish, about that. What it does is it's going to hold my die cut in place. I do love working on my glass work surface, but with these delicate petals, I didn't want to risk bending them. So the tacky mat is going to hold my flower in place. Now I'm starting off with Zest, which is a nice bright yellow. I start in the center and blend about halfway out. And I did that for all the other ones. I just did that off screen to save a little bit of time. Then I'm going to come in with grapefruit, and this color I'm going to start on the outer edge of the petal and work my way in about halfway. So it's kind of meeting that yellow, and they're going to create a beautiful blend right in the center there. One of the key tips when you are doing this type of blending with these size die cuts is using a smaller blending brush. These are mini blending brushes from Altenew. They work really well because they are circle, they're flat bristles, and I just have a really great result when I'm ink blending with them. You can experiment with different types of blending brushes, but this is a size that I find works really well. Now, once I am done getting the edges, I wanted to really step up the edges a little bit. And for that, I am going to bring in paprika. This may seem quite drastic, and it kind of is, but this is my zone. I've had a lot going on lately, and even though this is creating a card and it's still kind of work, this is just my zone to do this blending. And when I am using really stark contrasting colors like that light yellow in the center and this paprika on the very, very outer edges, it just does something for me, so I do really love how this turned out. So like I said, that color is just going on the very outer tips of the petals. Now, once I have those done, I wipe down my tacky mat just with a stamp chamois or a tidy towel. And now I'm going to do these centers. So I started out with a cappuccino ink, again, just using a small blending brush for this. You could also start with colored cardstock, but there's just something about ink blending your entire petal that really gives you more control, I feel, over the blending and the transitions. Now I'm going to bring in a micro blending brush, which is a little bit smaller, and I'm going to go around the very outer edges. For that outer edge, I am using mocha, but you could also come in with black very lightly if you really wanted to step that contrast up. I can now build my sunflowers. I'm going to use my new craft glue from Simon Says Stamp. I absolutely love this glue. I'm actually almost out of it already, so I need to stock up. And I just place a little bit of liquid glue in the center, and then I'm layering the flowers together. That liquid glue really gives us time to kind of move that around so that our petals are kind of lined up in between each other. Then once I have my three flowers built, I'm going to add these centers to that. And for that, I am going to be using these foam circles. I actually couldn't find any to link you to. I have had these in my stash forever, but they fit perfectly behind my centerpieces for the flowers. So that's just going to help pop them up from the flower a little bit. Any type of foam adhesive would work for this. Next, I'm going to create the background. So I brought my craft tacky mat back out to hold my cardstock in place. This is Hammermill once again. It is cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I am going to use the A2 masking stencil. So this is creating a rectangle in the center or kind of towards the center of my cardstock. What it's going to do is give me a very crisp and clean edge. Although I do love blending panels and popping them up with foam tape, there's something about a very crisp and clean edge from ink blending that is very satisfying. So I am going to start with dew ink and a blending brush. I'm going to actually color in the entire area just very, very light handed. I usually will pick up my ink with the brush and then dab off on the side a little bit. I don't want to come in too heavy handed. I'd rather add more ink than come in too strong. Now, the next color is going to be mist. These are actually all together in one trio and they work beautifully together, transitioning from the light color over to the darkest, which is going to be raindrop. And for mist, I wasn't sure exactly how strong that was going to be. So I like to kind of start in the corners and then work my way to the straight edges. And for that, I'm not blending all the way to the center. I'm going to leave that highlight area in there. And then I'm going to finish off with Raindrop, which is the darkest color out of this trio. Again, I'm going to pick it up, tap off on my work surface, and then start blending up in the corner. I found that this was such a very unique color combination. It kind of is on that teal side, but yet not. So I really love this particular trio. And when I was blending this, again, I did not go all the way into the center. I kind of blended only part way in so that you can see that gradual transition. And then the most satisfying part is peeling away that stencil to reveal those crisp edges. I will use my die pick to kind of get underneath my cardstock a little bit and then peel it up from my craft tacky mat. So any sentiment is going to work for this particular card project, but I found there are some really beautiful sentiments on the Wildflower Cuttings stamp set. So I picked out one of those. I have some white cardstock here in my Misty. I'm going to ink up the sentiment with the VersaFine Clair ink and just gently stamp that down. You don't want to push too hard because these letters are kind of delicate and you don't want to distort them. And then I die cut it out with the coordinating die. I love stamping text on my backgrounds. So this card would look great as is, but I did want to add that text. And for this, I'm using the friendship text background. It's a pretty old and well loved stamp in my collection. So I'm placing that in my Misty tool. I picked it up at the door of the Misty. And of course, because this one is a red rubber stamp, I removed the foam insert from my Misty. And then I placed some repositionable tape on the back of my blended panel and I'm placing this over my background stamp. You really want to make sure you're lining that up straight because it is text and that will be very noticeable it is if it's off center. So now that I kind of close the back of my Misty there backwards to pick up my cardstock, I can ink up the text with white pigment ink and I stamp down really only in the center, but it's not going to be a big deal if it gets on the outside edges because it is white pigment ink on white cardstock. I am creating a side folding card base. So I scored it at 4 1/4 and I'm going to fold that in half and then reinforce that fold with my bone folder. I will add some tape runner to my card front. And then I like to actually stand my panels up to make sure that they are lined up perfectly at the bottom and on the very outer edges. So, what is becoming quite habitual for me lately is giving you a what would I do different tip. So, I battled with two different designs. I was going to do maybe just two flowers. Then I settled on this three flower combination where they're all kind of bunched up in the middle. That does kind of hide the highlight in the center a little bit, but that's okay. I am going to pop up each of these with some thin foam squares. Now, the top flower and the bottom flower have the thin foam square and then the one on the right is going to have a regular thickness foam square. And this one does stick out on the edge a little bit. I have my sentiment, and what I end up doing is I add my sentiment on the right hand side of the card. But what I would suggest is if you're doing this type of design, is putting the sentiment on the left hand side. Because what I figured out afterwards, or what when I was looking at it afterwards, was that I'm very right sided heavy right now with the flower sticking out on the right hand side and my sentiment on the right hand side. It's very heavy on that side. So if I were to give you any tip right now on what would I do different, it would be to place the sentiment on the left hand side to help balance that card out. Now, I know the recipient is not going to notice the difference. They're not going to critique the card. They're going to be very happy that they received it. I just like to share tips with you on what I would do differently and why. So I hope that helps you in your card making process. I hope you enjoyed this video where I'm using these bright, bold, contrasting colors for my card project. I'm very happy with how this all turned out, and I hope you are too. Again, I will have all of my supplies linked down below in the video description and over on my blog. Thank you all so much for joining me today. And if you enjoyed today's video, here is another one that I think you might like.